Alrighty, welcome to the next class. Woohoo! So at this point, we should have your character rigged. Now it's time to start animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how to animate basically a walk cycle, and then how you would animate a general scene, like how to get a scene basically set up for your films. Okay. So animation, you probably know what that is. Basically, it's the process by which you give the appearance of life to an inanimate object by producing motion either frame by frame or producing keyframes that are then interpolated by the computer. Basically it just makes things move, right? So that's the idea of animation. There's a bunch of different ways to go about animating, processes, if you will. Generally speaking, you're going to find your own. But what I'm going to have you do is this. So you should have your so I'm just going to go right into it so that you can learn how to animate. So you should have your character open, and you should see the rig, what you did last time. Okay, so this has that human IK rig on it, and from there we're going to make this work. But we need to fix one thing on the rig before we do. Watch this. Oh no! Right. So if you look, if I move this character, you can see his hair and stuff are not attached. So we basically just need to make sure that they are attached. So to do that, we're just going to grab this eye. I'm going to click on this one, hold shift, click on this one, and still holding shift, click on this one. And then the last thing I want to select is this head joint right there. Okay, so right like that, and then hit P. And now when this rotates, that will also rotate. Yeah, works pretty great. Let me try this instead. This to this. Is that better? No, still bad. Okay. All right. So you might notice that's a little bit off. There's reasons for that. It'll look fine when we do this. Just the head turns and stuff might be a little wonky. We can fix that later, but for now we're gonna call that good because at least it's somewhat attached to it. Okay, so once you've done that, go ahead and just save the rig. So I'm just gonna Control S. Yay! Okay, then what I want you to do is make a new scene. So we're just gonna go File, New Scene, voila. Now what I want you to do, because what we're gonna do is you made a scene, your character rig. Now, when you were working in a big production, you don't just open or import. I could file, like, let's say this is my environment. So I'm going to make a plane here. And let's say this is a floor, but this is my environment, right? You don't just import all the files, because let's say that we're working in a big production and I've got Cindy animating and I've got James animating and I've got Geraldo animating, right? I got all these people animating. Well, let's say the rig is broken. Well, if they import that rig into their scene, I'd have to go to each one of their scenes and fix it. So what we do instead is we reference the object in there. Okay, so what you do is you go to File. You don't even need this. I'm just going to delete that. File, Create Reference, and then it should go right to your Scenes folder. If it doesn't, that means your Scenes folder of your project. I don't have a project set up for this because I just didn't do one here. And then you reference it. You just File, Reference, select that rig file, and then you reference it. Now what that does is it basically does a lot of things. For one, if I click on something, I can't hit delete. See, you can't delete Chestnut Effector is locked by read-only children. So basically, this is referenced into my scene, but it's not actually existing. If I change something in the original file, this original rig file, it will change for every other thing that this is referenced into. Okay, so the idea here is that we can basically use that one thing and reference it in. Okay, so that's how we're going to do this all the time. So just reference in the character, and we're going to animate in this new scene. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to do kind of a basic walk cycle of our character and kind of go from there. So I don't need this outliner. That's not really helping us. Go to the human IK settings here. Definition. And go to Controls. Okay. That tab. All right. and then choose this option. Okay. Okay. So basically, this will do the full body. This will be part of the body, and this will do the just that individual element. All right. So we're just going to do kind of a layered approach here. So we're going to do a typical walk cycle. It's going to be on every beat, which is basically a half second. And go down here to this little running guy that's trying to avoid being hit by this gear. And I want you to scroll down and make sure it says 24 FPS times 1. Okay? And then just hit save. That way when you play, it's good. So basically it means in 1 second, he should make 2 steps. So what I'm going to do is right now, you can see it's showing us 1. This is the range slider, and this is the time. So basically, the entire thing goes from 1 to 200. So you can see I can grab this around. See, now it's showing from 200, that's this number, to 81. That's here. If I scroll over here, it shows me 1 to 120. And you can make this bigger or smaller, right? And you can also just change the numbers here. I can make it 500. And then now this will go up to 500, okay? Or you can make it less. But honestly, it doesn't really matter because you can animate up to 500 and then change this to 200 and go back to 500. You don't lose anything. It's just the entirety of it. So I don't really care what you have there. But what I want you to do is just for this range slider, go from 1 to 24. Because we're going to make a loop of a walk cycle so that when we hit play, it'll loop 24 and 1 will be the same frame, and then that way it'll loop the walk. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to animate this. So, oops. All right. Let's do some other things here. I'm going to go ahead and up here, this is object select, and this means I can select all these different objects. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the ability to select geometry. Because otherwise, I can select on him, but if I click this off, you see I can't select on his geometry. I'm also going to turn off joints, because watch, if I click on this, oh, let me turn that back on, right? It'll click on joints, but if I turn off the ability to click on joints, now I can't. That leaves the only thing left, basically, are the actual controllers we want to control, okay? So I just hit 4 for wireframe. All right, good. All right, so let's do this. So, the main controllers we're going to want to control are basically these red ones, okay? Those are the ones that we're controlling here. So anything of the red ones. You can leave the blue ones alone. All right, back here. My controllers are kind of small, but all right. So go to this guy here. I'm also going to do this. This is auto key, and what that does. So click on this, it'll turn red. What'll happen is, if I key something, let's say I key it here, and I go over here and I move it, you'll see it automatically does a little red dash. It'll automatically create a key there. Oops, cancel, that's Control Z. If I don't have this on, when I go to move it, see how it doesn't make a key, and watch as soon as I move this, it'll snap back to where it was. So it won't auto key. So go ahead and turn that on. All right, so let me show you how to key. So I want you to do is make sure on the first frame I've got his left leg, and I'm going to hit S, like sucker and succotash. Okay, so hit S, you'll see a little red dash will pop up. Now, I'm going to need his feet to spread apart, so I want him to go like here and here. So what I'm going to do is I want you to take his waist and move it down a little bit. Okay, so grab the red one, move it down. Go back and grab the, not this thing, this one here. My controllers are kind of small, but grab this, and I want you to move this one forward, like that, and hit S. Grab this one and move that one back. I want you to go as far as you can without the leg becoming straight. So it can be a little bit bent, like that, and then hit S. See, little red thing. Okay, good. So basically a walk, right, at its most extreme is legs farthest apart in one direction, then farthest apart in the next direction. So we got that at 1. Now what I want you to do is go to 12. Take this leg, pull it all the way forward, like that. It'll auto key that 12. take the other one and go all the way back until it snaps, until it doesn't snap. And so now, if you scrub like this, if I click and drag, you can see he's sliding back and forth. But I need 24 to be the same as 1, so that when I loop, it'll go back to the other one. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to show you a couple ways of doing it. So let's grab both of them. Let's do one at a time, actually. Select this one. Right-click over top of this and go to Copy. Go over here, right-click, and go up to Paste, and then just paste. Same thing with this leg. Go to the first keyframe, right-click, copy. Go to the last keyframe, right-click, paste, paste. So basically 24 and 1 are the exact same. And that's the way it needs to be for the whole thing if you want it to loop correctly. Now if we hit play, you'll see it as most basic. He looks like he's like, I don't know, cross-country skiing, right? So that's super great. Might be the greatest animation I've ever seen in my life. Okay. So that obviously doesn't quite work because the leg that's coming forward, which in this case is his right leg, right? It shouldn't just be sliding forward. He should be picking it up in the air, right? And then putting it on the ground here. So if it's 1 and 12, halfway is 6. So go to 6. I want you to pick it up and then also rotate it, because usually we drag our feet a little bit. So you're going to see something like this. Up, rotate, and then he's going to step. Okay? And then we want to do the same thing with this one. Select this one. It only shows you the keys of the thing you have selected. If I have nothing selected, notice there's no keys, right? If I have this one selected now, it'll show me this one's keys. So he goes back, that's right. But then when this leg comes forward, I need it to go up. So that's 18 is halfway between 12 and 24. So I'm going to go up, pull this up. I'm going to rotate it, so W and E, so W for move. Good. And now if we hit play, right, looks a little bit more like a walk, getting closer. That's it's real acceptable. All right, so another thing that's kind of weird, though, is that whenever you make a key, the computer will automatically interpolate it as a linear interpolation. I mean, it's going to basically blend from one to another. So if you look, when, we'll look at this other leg, because this is the first one to come forward. This leg comes up, right? You can see it drags up. That's good. But then see how it kind of, it like leads his toe? Usually people will actually lift their toe up and then come down to the ground. So what I want to do is on 10, on this one, rotate it up like this. So that way it goes up and then he'll hit the floor. Grab this one and we're going to do the same thing. So this one goes back, that's fine. Then it comes forward and then basically 2 before 24, it should be up. So we're going to go ahead and go up. Like that. You see now that looks a lot better, right? Now at its most basic, this is working. This could get a heck of a lot more fancy. I'm just trying to get the real basics of what we're working here. We're doing what's called kind of a layered approach, because I'm doing the feet first, then I'm going to do the hips, then I'm going to do the arms, and so on and so forth. Okay? All right. That looks okay. So now we're going to do the hips here. Okay, so we're going to call that good. I'm just doing a really basic walk, just so you know how a walk works. Okay, so we're going to say that looks good. So I'm going to go to frame 1, hit S. It should be the same at 12, hit S. And then go to frame 24 and hit S. Okay, so that way this is kind of the starting position. All right. Now this is going to get a little bit more complicated. I'm going to try to do the simpler things first. So if you were to look at when this leg is forward, the hips would aim with it like that. You see what I'm saying? Because in order to kind of help the leg extend. So on frame 1, just rotate it a little bit. Don't go too crazy, like maybe like that. All right. And then at frame 12, rotate it a little bit in the opposite direction. And then 24 needs to be the same as 1. Because watch, see if I click here to here. See how it's not the same? So there's another way to copy and paste keys, but it's a little bit more difficult. You can go ahead and right click and copy and paste if you want, but this is a little bit quicker. With this thing selected, if I middle mouse button, click and drag, notice that the slider's moving, but the character up here, see how he's not changing? I'm going to middle mouse button, click and drag to 24. Then I'm going to let go of the middle mouse button and then just hit S. And now you'll see, right, so the hips are kind of going with the body. That's pretty good. All right, so another thing that's going to happen is at the halfway marker, when the leg is coming forward, okay, so when the leg is up, all of the weight goes on this leg. This is now the leg that's bearing all of the weight. So what's going to happen is the hips are going to shift over onto this, and they're going to tilt towards it. So on frame 6 here, right, you can see this leg is up, this leg is the bearing weight one. I'm going to hit W. Oh, I hit S, sorry, whoops, I meant W. There you go. I'm going to hit W. I'm going to move it over a little bit towards that leg, and I'm going to rotate this like that, okay? So you can see the weight goes there. Oh. Excuse me. All right. So basically, he's going to go, oh, put his weight there. Now, if you want to make something more feminine, you want to shift those more because generally females have wider hips, and so the lateral movement will actually be more extreme. If you're trying to do masculine, you do less of that. Okay, so 6 here, that means at 18, it's going to be the opposite, right? So this leg's now coming forward. I'm going to go this way a little bit, and I'm going to rotate this down a little bit like that. Okay, so now if you look, you can see. All right, so that's okay. That's actually the least important of the motions that it needs to do, but I'm going to show you what the next thing is. So now what we need to do is this. We've already kind of been doing this. I could probably... I don't want to show you without... So basically, when we do our animations, we have basically our main key poses, all right? So in our case, his main key poses on this guy are his contact poses, meaning when his feet hit the ground. So this is one. It's when his feet are the most extreme apart, okay? Then the next most important pose is this one, right? So it's the opposite, and it's when, notice that it's when this foot hits the ground. That's the contact, okay? And then the next most important one is this one right here, when his foot hits the ground, right? So it's most basic, when the feet are the most far apart, that's its main important pose. Now the next most important pose would be the halfway point, which would be here, when the one leg is passing the other one. So we call this the passing pose. So basically his one leg, as well as his arms aren't doing it right yet now, but when the one leg is passing the other leg, that's the next major pose. So it'd be this one and this one, right? So it's the halfway marks. So those two alone do most of, like, just those few things really can kind of tell that it's a walk, right? Just like when we first saw this one and this one and this one, you know, it looked like he was cross-country skiing, but at least it looked sort of like a walk. And then when we put the passing position, it made it look a lot more like a walk. So the next ones after that is basically to break down halfway between those, right? So it'd be here, these spots. Now, we don't need to do too much of the feet, but these do. So the next poses after the contact poses, so that's these extreme ones, and then the passing pose, which are these middle ones. The next ones are the up position and the down position. So basically, after your character steps, it's walking is more or less a series of falling. So you bring yourself up and then you fall onto your foot. You bring yourself up and then you fall onto your foot. So right here, he just stepped, right? So after he steps, he's going to have a recovery. He's actually going to go a little bit low first, okay? So he's actually going to come down a little bit. So right at 3, we're going to take this, and just on the Y, I'm going to move him down a little bit, okay? Because he's going to step and recover. This is his low position. Then he's going to go here, and then his high position is just before he does his next step. So that's going to be at 9. You're going to go much higher, like that. So it's down, and then high position, and then he'll come back down, and then that's going to be his low position here again, which I guess we put, could be either one of these. I'm going to go here, though. Go a little low, and then his high position, which will be here. And now we have the up-down funk you up. up, down, funk you up. All right, so now you can see he's got his up and down position. And if we were to look only at his legs and his hips, you can see he's walking. Now, you can do all sorts of things. The more up and down these positions are, typically could mean happy or goofy. It's also more masculine, generally speaking, because feminine walks, typically what happens is that they'll walk real heel to toe, meaning the legs here will be much closer together, okay, which results in not a lot of up and down hip motion, as opposed to men, which will walk with their legs generally, or masculine walks, I should say, because it's one of the reasons why you can tell if you look at somebody, you can be like, oh, that person is homosexual as opposed to heterosexual, is you can actually tell just by the gait of their walk. They'll actually have a more feminine walk or a more masculine walk, which is kind of an interesting, thing. But typically, with masculine walks, the legs will be more far apart. And then what ends up happening is because they're farther apart, every time they step, this position of this ends up being more up and down. Okay? So let me undo that because that's going to mess it all up. So you can play around with some of that as well if you're trying to make it more masculine, more feminine. Again, if you have more up and down too, if you have like a real low and there's not a lot of up and down motion, that could generally mean like sadness as well. Especially with the feet. If the feet go up and down a whole lot, then that is basically like a happy walk. If they drag, if they only go up a little bit, then that would be more of a sad walk. Okay, so we got that going on, so that looks okay. That's acceptable. And we could do more with it, but I'm just trying to do a basic. Here we go. All right, great. So now what we're going to do is, the rest of it's actually a lot easier. If you look, you can see he's kind of moving a little bit side to side here. Like the top's a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm more or less just going to counteract what the hips are doing. Most of the time what your shoulders do is the opposite of your hips. So if my hips are bending this way, the shoulders will bend the opposite way. And it creates a nice fluid motion through the figure. But really it's just because it's trying to counteract what's happening. So what we're going to do is you can see that this guy's facing, I have the hips facing with the legs. So I actually need it to face kind of the opposite. So we're going to go, hopefully it'll let me, and it's not going to. That's weird. Let's see, will it do it this way? Okay. So you want to try and animate with this, but if for whatever reason it's not letting you animate with this, move to this process. If this doesn't work, then move to this one. But generally, try to stay on here, and if for whatever reason it's not letting you do what you want, just move one level above. So I'm going to go like that, and I'm going to try and basically level this out so that his arms are slightly in the opposite of his hips. So if we go to the top view, you see like they're a little bit going the opposite of the body. Okay, so I'm going to go like that. I'll hit S. I'm going to go 24 and key it there as well. And then at 12, we'll do the opposite. He should now be going this way. And I went too much that time. Let me look. And do a little bit less, like that. Okay. Good. All right. So that will counteract that. And then the other thing I need to counteract is on the 6 here. See how it's making his body lean to the left here? I'm just going to go ahead and take this and just lean this one in the opposite direction, right? Just a little bit. And then I'll go to 18 and I'm going to lean it in the opposite direction this way, just a little bit. All right. Good. Yay. All right, so now what we want to do is animate his arms. Now with his legs, we want to move these in a very by moving them. The arms are actually better if you rotate them. Okay, so let's see, can I go back to this or was that not work? Yeah, okay, so we got to stay in this mode. Okay, so with the arms selected, I'm going to go ahead and we can grab both of these guys. And I'm just going to rotate these down. Like so. Okay. That's acceptable. And we'll just do one arm at a time. Okay. So I will key it here. And then this arm should be the opposite of this leg. So I mean this arm should go forward, right? Like so. I'm going to go ahead and also key it on 24 because I want 1 and 24 to be the same. I'm going to go to 12, and I'm going to swing it back. And I don't have to hit key because it's auto-keyed. And you can see, good. And we'll do the same thing with this arm here. So this arm should be going back. Key. Also key it on 24, so it's the same. I'm going to go to 12 and key it there. And now you'll see. Alright. Now that's not the greatest looking thing I've ever seen, because you can see it's a little crappy. So what we're going to do now is this. Where is his... yeah. Okay, well, this is actually a good example. I decided I don't really like those because it's not giving me a lot of control as far as... actually does work okay. All the same though, let's say we didn't like what we did there. What I can do is this. Notice, this is actually part of the problem that I was talking about before. So notice that when I have this selected, see how it's showing me keys? I didn't make any keys on this. The reason why it's doing that is because I have this mode on. If I click on this one, well, basically these two arms are attached. So that's why we have to be in this mode, because I'm kind of controlling this whole joint chain down. So, if you wanted to delete a key, let's say I didn't like this key here, like I didn't want this, let's say I didn't want this middle one, all you have to do is don't hit delete. It'll try to delete the curve, which won't work anyways because it's reference, but you right click and then you go delete, and that will actually delete that key. But I'm going to undo that. I think it's fine. So, I want to have a little bend in my arm here. So at the first one here, I'm just going to take it. I'm going to kind of click and drag. I'm on the move tool, move it up like this. That looks fine. I want to copy that to 24. So I'm going to middle mouse button, click and drag to here, and hit S. I'm going to go to 12, and I'm just going to put a little bend there too. Even pull that back a little. Okay. All right, we'll do the same thing here. I know there's a weird hiccup there. I'll show you that in a second, how to fix that. Okay, so same thing here. I'm going to do a little bit of a bend. I'm going to middle mouse button, click and drag to here, key. I'm going to go to 12, pull this up, and key. Okay. And that's a little bit better. All right. Now, I'm not having as big of a problem. So you might notice something like this is happening with his arm. We could try to fix this a couple of ways. I'm going to try to do this one fix and see if this fixes it first. So with, I guess just that one selected, go to Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. Already half an hour here. And select, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to hold Shift, select all of these. And then I want you to go to Curves, Euler Filter. Let's see if that fixes it. Alright, that didn't. Let's select this guy. And let's select this, Curves, Euler Filter. Does stink. Okay, I'm going to hit E for rotate. And let's see. Well, let's try going in the middle here. And I'm just going to try and push this out and see if that... It does suck. Okay. Alright, so the Euler filter thing is unfortunately not working. It's weird because his other arm looks fine. Rotates here. So what we want to do is this. See how it's my blue? So I'm going to go to rotate Z, and I'll hit F to frame. So basically this is a graph that shows all of your keyframes. I usually don't mess around with this until I find that there's some sort of weird issue. So I'm going to look and see if there's anything weird about it. Curves, Euler filter. It doesn't. Okay. And it looks fine, but if I look at it, it feels like the Y, which is the green one, is acting weird. So I'm going to hit F on that, and you can see this looks weird, right? You would think that this would just kind of go like this, but instead I'm getting this weird up thing, which is not really what I wanted. So let's go curves. Let's see if Euler filter works on that. Okay, it doesn't. All right. So what I'm going to do is I kind of want to try and fix that. So before what I did is I tried to go like this, and it sort of kind of works, but it's still acting a little bit weird. So I'm going to grab this keyframe here. I'm going to hit flatten. That didn't really work. Okay. Acting like garbage. Okay. Tangents. Let's see. Where is that one thing? Was it here? Tangents? No. Make sure I got this selected. Go to curves, and we want to do, this is like a weird thing. It has something to do with the human IK. But if you go to, because you'll notice there's supposed to be little handles that I can grab, and they're not showing up. They have like a weird thing with this, so I'm not sure why they're like built like that. But if you select it, and then you go to change rotation interpolation, go to independent Euler. That's how you spell it, not Euler. Euler. And then it actually will look more correct, and you'll see it's going to do it a little bit less here. Still kind of penetrating. All I got to do is I'm just going to click and drag over this. I got the move tool. I'm just going to pull this down a little. Actually, you know what? That shouldn't matter. Let's leave that one. I'm going to grab this. Let's see. Let's go out a little bit. That's better. I feel like this doesn't need to be quite so high. There we go. Okay. But that's the graph. So the graph, you end up having to make weird things. But if for some reason it's not acting the way you want, just select it, go to curves, and then it's change rotation interpolation to independent Euler. That's the way all this is. These are independent Eulers. It's Euler rotation. There's two kinds if you look here. Where is it? There's quaternion, and then there's Euler. Euler is a lot easier to understand. If you've used Unity and stuff, you'll notice that you probably see this. It's like quaternion is the way that it works, which is typically, I guess, in video games, because you don't end up with some of the weirdness, but it's hard to animate in quaternion, so we're not using quaternion. Okay. So we've got that kind of going on. I'm going to call that good for the walk because we're at over half an hour. But that gives you an idea how to do a walk. And now what I'm going to do after this is show you how to set up a scene to basically animate. So you can save this if you want. I'll just, Control-Shift-S, and we'll just call it, walk cycle example. Voila. Okay, but you're not going to use this for anything. This is just for instruction purposes, so you can kind of see how to animate. But notice that this is indeed a walk cycle, which means, for a whole scene, he's just going to do 2 steps and then it's done. So this just works as an example. It's not going to be so useful otherwise. All right, so I'll make another video and I'm going to set up your scene and I'll show you kind of how to start animating.